Let's talk about momentum. So many times I hear agents just talking about how hard they're working, and they work, and they don't take any breaks. And then what happens is they get burnt out. Hey, we've all been to that point where you've just pushed yourself to the limit. Well, what happens when you get burnt out? Most of the time, what I see is agents just stop working. They literally just stop. They have to shut down, turn off the phone. They don't respond. They cannot cope with anymore because they're completely burnt out, or their momentum and energy just crashes, right? I don't want you to experience this roller coaster in your career. I want you to have solid momentum. The reason I want to talk about momentum is because oftentimes what people don't realize is that when you stop, you don't just lose the progress that you were making, you lose momentum, or there's negative momentum, this back pulling of the progress, right? So a lot of times this happens when people are making their calls. They say, oh, look, I've been making my calls. And so they can sling together several days of making their calls. And then for whatever reason, they stop. The problem is that they can't just get right back onto making their calls again. They actually have to get themselves all psyched up again to make their calls. So not only did they lose that cyclical sessions of calls, they lost the desire or the momentum, right? And just like they say, an object in motion stays in motion. Well, it's the same thing. Inaction is momentum in its own way, right? Like you could actually have negative momentum so many days without your prospecting and without your lead follow-up. Now, not only do you have to get yourself back to making the calls, you have to get yourself psyched up to make the calls. And it's not where you just hit back on the calls and you're ready to go. You've actually lost all those days of making calls. So now when you get back to your call session, you might have 25, 30, 40 past due calls. Well, how does that feel, right? It feels horrible. So there's another negative momentum you have to get over. I hope you guys are tracking with me, right? We make our calls every single day. We get the momentum of every single day I've made my calls and I'm caught up. When we stop making our calls, now all of a sudden, every day I go without making my calls drags me farther and farther away from just getting back on and making my calls. Because when I log into my CRM, I'm gonna see all these past due calls that I have to do. It's gonna negatively impact me. I'm gonna feel bad about myself. And then I'm probably just gonna close my CRM and I'm not gonna make any calls. That's the negative momentum. So my challenge to you is, don't fall out of momentum. Do whatever you have to do to keep things moving. Don't burn out. Take days off. Taking a day off is totally different than ignoring all of your responsibilities and not making calls because you're burnt out. And you guys know the difference. So schedule your days off. In fact, don't schedule to make calls on your days off. I don't believe in scheduling making calls on your days off. Why? Because you're not gonna do it. It's your day off. For me, I don't schedule calls on Sunday. Sunday's the day that I spend with my family. So I don't schedule any follow-up calls on Sunday. When I come back to the office on Monday, I don't come back to the office with 15 past due calls that I scheduled on Sunday that I knew I wasn't gonna do, and now I'm into the office and I feel horrible because I'm starting the day with a negative 15 calls. Don't do that. Stay in momentum, take days off, and just be consistent. At the end of the day, being consistent will help you stay in momentum.